Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we have the rebuild of the 20-year-old Brompton. This video was shot a good couple of months ago now, and I've only just got to the point where I've done the voiceover for the rebuild and shot the intro so that I can now bring it to you guys here. As always with the dismantle video you hopefully seen before this, the rebuild is a little bit more finicky because obviously this is where you're having to fine-tune stuff, make sure all your gears work, make sure everything is actually aligned, make sure your brake cables are tension. I don't go into great detail on it because there's already so many amazing resources. This is mainly just the process of me rebuilding it. But as always, I am confident enough to do all that. So if you do have any questions where you've got stuck, drop them in the comment section and I'll be sure to get back to you, hopefully within like 1 to 2 days time there. But enjoy the video. I did feel there was some worth in uploading this one. I thought the dismantle one might be enough, but the rebuild is slightly different, so hopefully if you need that, here's the resource you need. So thank you for your time, and as always, thank you so much for your support on the channel, and enjoy the video.
He's the Brompton Guy!
Right, so the first thing I'm fitting in this video is the upgraded rear latch for the suspension. As you may have seen in the other one and my used video, the 2004 just comes with a standard quick release latch to hold the saddle in place, whereas from 2008, if my memory serves me, we got the upgraded latch which actually holds the rear triangle in place. This was my biggest gripe with the 2004 model and is a much welcome upgrade to the bike. Next we're going to install the seat post, probably one of the easier jobs, literally slide it up and clamp it off into its desired location. Next, the saddle. We're going to get another upgrade in the Brompton here, so we now have the Pentalock clip. Again, to me, another significant upgrade because the original clasp for the saddle is absolutely horrendous to adjust, and even when it is super tight, I still feel it has errors of movement, but the Pentalock so far has been faultless in my opinion. Bottom bracket, make sure you give this a good cleaning out first. You know, you don't want to have to change your bottom bracket all that often. This one's certainly not been changed since 2004, so make sure you take the time to grease everything up, clean it out, and just be a little bit cautious with the bottom bracket itself. Make sure you get the official tool to take it out and put it back in, because if you misthread these, it would be catastrophic. You've got to bear in mind these threads are embedded in your frame, so take absolute care when refitting a bottom bracket. I would say also as a top tip, it's probably best not to fully tighten either side until everything's partially aligned. So there's no point fully tightening the left or right end until you know both threads have matched and you can see both axle ends coming through. Next, all we want to do is install the cranks themselves. Make sure they're obviously going on a 180 degrees opposite pattern from each other, and then you can lock them in place. I would recommend just a little bit of Loctite on the end of this locking nut on this one here. I would also highlight at this point, this is another upgrade. So I've went for a 42 tooth ring, which isn't made by Brompton, but for the hills I'm planning to conquer on it and what I plan to do with this bike going in the future, speed isn't its #1 priority. Next, and what I'd always say is the most important upgrade to any bike, is I am installing my SPD pedals. On this one for my runarounds, I'm just using a set of Ultegra pedals, but when I am actually out on the road or racing, I've actually got a set of Garmin R200 pedals, or whatever they are there, which are power meters, and they are just a phenomenal pedal. And the fact you can bring a power meter to a Brompton, it's a win in my book. The rear triangle, again, I can't believe how simplified this is fitted to the bike. Literally give the cylinder a good grease and make sure the insides have been cleaned out. I wouldn't necessarily need to grease them, but just make sure they're a good bit cleaned out. And when installing the rear triangle, I would strongly recommend putting some Loctite on the end of these little bolts here. Mainly because as I've been riding, when I've loosened them before, they actually slowly do come out. So I would strongly recommend having Loctite on that side there. And you do need 2 Allen keys in order to tighten these up properly, otherwise the cylinder will just spin inside the main frame. You will notice in this video here, having a 42 tooth chainring is also a massive advantage because it gives you full access to the rear triangle when you're tightening it up. Now, I did fit the cranks first, but if I had anything larger than a 42 tooth here, I would not be able to put the rear triangle on with the front crank on, so just bear that in mind. Now all we need to do is simply fit the rear suspension block. I have so much content already covered in this, but it essentially boils down to one 10mm nut at the back. Just make sure before you fully tighten it that you double check it lines up with the frame itself. If it's slightly off in the quick release, it can just make it a little bit less comfortable to get snug, so give it a hand tight first and then just line it up to the latch itself there, and then you can fully tighten it into position. The forks and stem definitely took me a little bit of time to get a good workflow on how to do these, so don't think they're just as simple as you drop in, drop out. Putting them back is a little bit easier. Make sure you've got your caged bearing at the bottom, give that a good clean and grease up, put the top one in, lock the bolts into position, and you should be all good. You will need, I believe it's on this Brompton, a 32mm cone spanner to actually tighten the forks to the head tube itself. And then the stem itself does take a little bit of trial and error. As I say, it's got that choke at the bottom, but if you get that longer bolt as I talked about in the other video, then it actually helps you set it in significantly easier. Don't get me wrong, I mean, this did take me a little bit longer, so make sure you get the right size bolt, make sure the choke is aligned into the little cutout at the bottom, and then just tighten it up from there. I think also a good thing to note is you don't really want to tighten the top headset tube all the way until this is actually positioned in, and then you can give that top headset tube a tighten up there. The old age handlebars. So obviously this is the part of the video that can be different for absolutely everyone. I said when I first got this bike, I was actually thought these high handlebars were just going to be pretty horrendous, but it turns out they're the perfect bar for me, mainly because I pull them down a little bit more so that I can get a better fit on the bike. And actually from an accessory fitting point of view, it's just got everything to add on everywhere. So I'm actually grateful I have this over the flat bar, which was my preference in the start. I did get told by Brompton if you get a flat bar, it doesn't change the stem size, but I have seen from the comments that actually apparently the stem size does get a little longer, which makes sense to me, but it's why I didn't bother too much on the bike. I was getting because I can fit flat bars anyway at any point, but just something to bear in mind. I've not 100% fact checked that, but it makes logical sense to me that if you get flat bars, you should get a longer stem. And yeah, so off topic there, so then simply slide on all your desired fittings to us. On this one, we're fitting so far in first the gear shifter, and we have the chain pusher on the bike here. Now obviously, if you are rebuilding, it is advised to change all these cables just because they can get frayed ends, especially if you're changing parts in and out. But obviously it's costly and can only be bought from Brompton, which is one of my biggest sort of pet peeves. It's great if you're not into bike maintenance because you can get them cut to length and just paid for and they fit perfectly. But it's also a downside because if you accidentally ordered the wrong length, it's just a bit of a pain. So you need to know all the numbers like the M's, the L's, the 6's, the 3's and all this type of stuff. So just something to bear in mind with the Bromptons, the standard Brompton parts on it. For this also, we are fitting the upgraded Shimano Dior brake levers. A, because I think they are better than the original ones that came with it. B, the original ones had all corroded and rusted. And C, it allows me to fit brake cables of my choice. So it means that if anything happens and I need a quick swap out, I can go in any bike shop and buy a standard brake cable for it. So a major win for me, and also not a costly upgrade at all. And what I would define as the second most important upgrade to my Brompton overall so far, and that's the Ergon GP4 grips. These grips are absolutely phenomenal, and yes, they are fairly expensive, but over my 4-day cycle to Paris, these grips only started to hurt towards the end of day 3. It gives you the feel of a drop bar bike because you can sit with your palms out on it. Even if you don't want to use the palms out, you can hold the handlebars, and they are just so well designed. So Ergon, I just want to give you a kudos for that because you've obviously put a lot of work into designing handlebar grips, and you've got a great product there, so well done. I did also read that a lot of people have to cut these down in size in order to make everything fit correctly. Now, I can see the benefit if you chop maybe a centimetre off these, but of all the changes I've done to my bike over this time, I've not actually had to chop them whatsoever. But I also don't see the point in chopping them, because when I am using the handlebar, that end centimetre, my hand's nowhere near touching. So I suppose if anything they could have shortened that, but I guess they can't just base all their clientele just to Brompton users, because I don't think on a standard flat bar this would be any form of issue. Right, this is the part of the video that gets a little bit specific to vintage Bromptons here, with the rear SRAM hub on it. I can't say it's a pain, and obviously this is unique to a 6-speeds model, but you want to put the two little cassette cogs on at the back, and then like a Di2 hub, it has a locking ring which requires a special tool. Technically you can use 2 screwdrivers to get the locking ring over, but it is so complicated. I say complicated. It's so difficult to get this done in any timely manner, and I would hate to have to do a repair like this on the road. But it can be done, but easier if you have the actual caliper tool that separates them when getting this off. Putting them back on isn't as bad as it seems, but all of it is a little bit of a time sink there. Once you've done that, you can simply just then put the rear wheel back in the rear triangle. Simply put the little locking washers in so it holds it in the frame, tighten up the bolts, and boom, there you go, you've got a wheel and a bike. Right, and then the caliper itself is also fairly simple to put back on. You can see the order that I place stuff on in the video here, but essentially you have to put the back aligning washer on, and then you can put the seat tube stop in, which helps clamp your seat post once it's folded on there. So again, nothing with this bike is overly complicated, which is, I guess, good from a DIY point of view, but I'm also don't quite then understand why Brompton services cost a lot more than regular services. So maybe it's just because of the parts, who knows. And like anything, you've got to just feed all the cables back through. This one here I am feeding towards the chain pusher itself. It goes towards the chain pusher and then just goes up to the rear brake itself there. Like the back wheel, the front wheel is no different. It's a rinse and repeat job. You put the 2 locking washers in, and then you can tighten up the 15mm bolts on front, and there you go. You've got a front wheel, nothing complicated there. The only thing I always wish Brompton had, quick release. Why there's no quick release? It saves a little bit of weight and it's just way more practical. And then same again with the front brake caliper. Simply put it through, and this one's a little bit even more simpler because it doesn't have any rear stop. So all you need to do is put your washer, spring ring and the locking nut, and there you go, you've got your front caliper back on, and just needs a little alignment to your rim. So the chain tensioner, again, very simple part to put back on. Simply put the tensioner over, and then you have the washer and locking nut. This is the longer nut, which then obviously then houses the little chain puller for the internal hub itself. Now this is probably one of the annoyances of the Brompton, is the fact if you ever do get a rear puncture, you have to take all this off. I really hope even I can figure a way where I can try and get rid of that system. I'm not having to dismantle everything like that, but future episodes will only tell if I can find a workaround for that. Once you've done that, you can then fit the chain and pusher guide assembly back on. Simply one bolt sits on the frame lovely, and it has a little guide that sits it perfectly into the frame also. And yeah, once you do that, you can then fit the little internal hub chain puller. This is where it really helps to have the new cables, so just thread it up, back round the wheel and out for the chain pusher itself. Again, the chain pusher is the part that switches between the 2 cassettes at the back there, so only an option on the 6-speed bikes. For this one, it's just got this easy to pull on, one tight. Has a little cable groove that lets the cable come back out of it there, and then you can just lock it in place again. It's the only reason I say that having a new one helps, because it is quite a small little hole, so if it's a frayed cable, it's just quite a long process and you're guaranteed to lose some cable in the way of doing it. And then you can simply lock in the little bottom part in order to make that attached to your hub. Now for the chain pusher itself, I would strongly advise Loctite on this part also, because there's no reason that it wouldn't just work itself loose. It's only one tiny little bolt, screws up and in, and then that's all you need to do for fitting of the chain pusher. Now the fitting of the chain pusher cable, I'm not going to lie, it's a pain in the beehole. It is just fiddly, in my opinion, poor design, hard to get on, hard to get off. I was going to take the time to make a dedicated video on the adjustment and fitting of this, because you're not going to get the full experience of this in the video, but it is finicky, it's not nice, and if anyone really does need that content, I'm more than happy to produce an individual video on it, but it's just not very pleasant, and probably one of the poorer design elements of the bike. So here we are at the top of it, aligning it into the little module here. So I recommend doing the top first before you do any real tensioning on it. This is the one cable I would recommend that if you are doing this, you get a new one. Just get a new one for this. It will make your life so much easier because it will have some excess on it. Because in order to fit this, it has to be almost trimmed to have no excess. So yeah, get a new cable with this and take the stress off your life for whatever the 15 to 20 pounds it is. So there you go, there's my episode that was recorded a long time ago with me doing some voiceover stuff to it, and it is a blast from the past seeing it there. I hope the rebuild was as useful as the dismantle, but because I recorded it, I thought I may as well use it because it obviously seemed some worth at the time to record the experience of that. Like my dismantle video, if you do have any questions about dismantling or rebuilding a Brompton, shoot them in the comments section, and all I'll do is give you my honest opinion back about it. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you so much for your continued support on the channel. It is blowing my expectations out the water and is making me really joyful to make this content for you. I would also like to show the appreciation for all the support I've had on my Buy Me a Coffee page and everyone that's came over there to say hello and contribute a little to the channel. Thank you so much for your time, enjoy your night, and until the next episode.